Hey friend, it's your creative word makeup artist pal Cat Sketch to bring you guys another spooky makeup video. Today's video is going to be super interesting because I am a huge fan of the Insidious series of movies, and there's Insidious 5 coming out. It's kind of like a multiverse if you didn't know. Insidious, the movie franchise, because Annabelle's tied into it and a lot of other movies and characters in the movies. It's so spooky ooky, and I'm going to turn into the original red demon from the first Insidious movie because it might be popping up soon. Who knows? So let's turn into this creepy red demon from Insidious and tell some very spooky stories. While doing so, I scoured the internet for some very scary stories, so that's what we're going to do today. Tell some spooky stories while turning into a creepy makeup. So let's get started. This first story was from an account that was actually deleted, so it's even more of an open mystery. And I found these on Reddit. This person around the age of 11 was in the house where they grew up in. And there was a slightly overweight older lady who used to shuffle down the hall late at night. They say they used to close their door because they were tired of seeing her. One night after she passed my door, they say I went into the living room, where she always was headed to follow her, and she was gone. I said loudly, "You're dead. This is our house now. You need to move on." Never seen or heard her again, which for me is surprising because in my opinion, you should respect ghosts and spirit. But they found out later that the previous owner died in that house, and she was described just as the woman that they saw in their house. In Perry, Florida, a very small town, I spent the weekend there with my family, and I was going to bed with my cousin in a room and asked him about the man who was sleeping in the bed he was in, and he looked so confused as I described the man. He ran and grabbed a picture, and it was the man. It turns out he was my grand uncle, and he died before I was even born. That was his house. My cousin didn't sleep in that bed that night. At 16 years old, they also had another story where they were pulling into their driveway with their lights off at the same house from the first story. They see a tall black figure hunched over peering into their parents' window. They got out of the car and it turned into looking dead at me. Its eyes were like fire and laser-like at the same time. When it turned, its eyes left a red trail that caught back up to its eyes. I remember those eyes like it happened a minute ago. Once it fixed on me, it cowered a bit as if it was surprised and scared at the same time. It turned and ran, not jumping, but striding over the gate that separated my yard from my neighbor's yard. From that day on, I knew there was something different about me. Later on in life, I was approached by a random woman who told me my past and my spiritual importance, and that they really don't like me. Ghosts, I'm pretty sure that is. This next story is by an author named Crazy P6287. And they say the worst stuff happens to me anywhere. I'm 13 and my grandma died a few years ago. And ever since, I've been seeing shadows from time to time, and ever since I've seen shadows in her room near the bed on the side where she passed. Recently, my mom told me someone else died in the house. And things have been bumbling up to the next level very quickly. But way before I was sitting outside, I saw a figure to my right and I heard it whisper, "Hey." And I didn't think much of it until I heard it again, closer and closer each time, whispering the same thing, "Hey." A few nights ago, I was sitting outside again, and right behind me, I heard a child's voice whisper, "Run." I didn't hear it the first time until it whispered again, "Run." And I didn't bother to look back until I made it inside. I turned back and saw a small shadow figure standing next to where I was seeing, but this was nowhere near over. I've been seeing shadow figures everywhere around my house, and it's gotten to the point where I hear whispers whenever I see them. It's gotten to the point where it happens even midday, but sometimes it freaks me out. The most is when my entire family was in their room and I heard someone or something rummaging around in the sink. And I didn't think much of it, and I thought it was like my sister putting away dirty dishes in the sink. But then I realized I didn't hear any footsteps coming down the hallway. The noise continued until I looked into the kitchen next to the sink, and there was nothing there. I've seen shadows a lot more now, and it freaks me out. The other day I was just chilling in my brother's room, and he was at work just like everyone else was, and my grandpa was at my friend's house. So I had the entire house to myself. And I heard footsteps and thought it was my grandpa barely getting back up from a friend's house. And I realized then that my grandpa's footsteps make a sliding noise. And I realized again I didn't hear the front door open. And the footsteps stopped directly outside of my brother's bedroom. I have never gotten up so quickly in my life to check my entire house. It was during the day when this happens, but throughout the entire night, things got even worse than what was happening during the day. Stuff like this has happened to me for years, but it never got this bad. All of this has happened at my grandma's house where I'm currently staying, but it doesn't get as bad at my house than it does at my grandma's house. I'm still freaked out about all this, but that's all I can remember. This next story is from Loop-Sided Poem 9362. My grandparents' house has always been so freaking scary without a reason to me when I was little. I never wanted to say anything because my grandma's very religious and she gets easily offended with some stuff. But recently the topic came out of nowhere in a family dinner, and well, I wasn't the only one who felt this way. 2 years after my grandparents got the house and my dad and his sisters were little, they were all in the living room just hanging out. And then out of nowhere, a little red ball, like a toy or something, started rolling down the stairs and then towards them. The living room couches face the stairs and the stairs face a door. I don't know how to explain it, just use your imagination, but they never had any dogs or pets. And there wasn't any air to just roll a ball out of nowhere. They all got creeped out, but after a few days, all pretended like nothing happened. They do have a dog now, and it's Chihuahua. This is important for the next part of the story because the Chihuahua is tiny and their bed is very tall. So whenever this Chihuahua, she wants something, she kind of just stands there, but she isn't able to climb into the bed. She just stands there leaning in the bed, so my grandparents already know when they feel a little kind of pressure, they know their dog wants to climb in the bed, so they help her by carrying her up into the bed. Now one night at 4 in the morning, my grandpa felt that dog just doing that, so he could carry her into the bed. But the door was closed, and he remembered that night the dog was sleeping in his daughter's room. So he thought it was all in his head because he's like used to feeling that little pressure from the side of his bed. So he went back to sleep until he felt it again. He says that every now and then he could feel it and it would be very freaked out by it because the dog was either not there or totally asleep. Moving on, their daughter, my aunt, who I'm very close with because we are very close in age, told us that there was a spot in her room that had always freaked her out. Because every single night when she was little, she saw a figure of a man that was almost as tall as the walls. Which, by the way, the walls are very, very high in their house. And that is why she always has something there to cover the wall. She had clothes racks there and it broke. She had some bookshelves and they fell. She now has metal drawers that every now and then they get marks as if someone's punching them really, really hard. Now, the thing that happened most recently was during summer vacation. My grandparents went on a trip and my aunt didn't want to be alone anymore. They left for almost a month and she had to be alone for 2 weeks. So since I didn't have anything to do, I kind of moved into her house for 2 weeks. And the first day, since we're huge horror fans, we did a horror marathon watching films, listening to podcasts, watching documentaries. You name it, we have probably watched it. Now, I think about it, that part probably has nothing to do with the story whatsoever, but we left the house to get food at like 10 p.m. at night and came back around 11 p.m. While my aunt was looking for the keys to the house, I was looking through the crystal in the door and told her very naturally, "Don't worry, I think my grandpa is coming to open the door." I didn't notice how wrong I was until she stared at me as if I just murdered someone. She just stared at me and said very quietly, "You know they're on a trip. Who did you see?" We got kind of scared because we thought someone had broken in. We called my dad, her brother, and he said that I probably didn't see anyone because, being totally honest, I just saw the shadow of what seemed like a very tall man, like my granddad, staring at us because the stairs just entering the house. So if you are standing in the stairs, the first thing you see next to you are some pictures. One from every sibling and one of the entire family. And right in front of us is the door. I thought it was my grandpa. I don't ever remember that they weren't there. We decided to go in the house and check it. My aunt unlocked the door, and just as she slightly opened it, this huge picture that was nailed onto the wall fell into the stairs and rolled. Well, it didn't roll, but it just fell all the way down to the door right at her feet. It didn't hurt her or anything, but the one thing that was hers fell right into her. We just stood there kind of in shock and finally entered the house. We checked that no one had broken in, and then we sat in the living room in silence, analyzing the whole situation for hours. We didn't even have an appetite anymore. I think we hadn't even seen so many scary movies that day. We probably wouldn't have been as scared as we were. But that actually happened, and we talked about it to everyone we know as a little harmless scary story that happened to us, until a friend of mine passed me the link of a research saying harmless little ghosts don't have the power of moving things or touching you. It would have been something way stronger and darker than a little ghost. And that obviously scared us, but again, huge horror fans. We went to sleep as if nothing happened. Since the bed in her room is only for her, we slept in our grandparents' room. Remember the one with the thing that pushes down the bed? Yeah, that one. We didn't even think about that. So we go in the bed and we watch some other scary films. We slept around 3 or 4 a.m. And the next day my aunt told me she felt like the dog wanted help in to get the bed, but when she woke up to check, the dog was sleeping on the other side of the room. And she got scared because she remembered what my grandpa had told us, and with what had happened the night, she was already pretty scared. She placed a pillow on her head so she couldn't hear anything, and about 20 minutes later, she felt how I tapped her on the shoulder twice, like if I wanted to ask her or tell her something or whatever. She removed the pillow to check on me, but I was sleeping. She even called my name to see if I would actually tap her shoulder again or if I was pranking her. And I was really asleep sleeping. The next day we realized it was better if we did a little cleansing on the house. We didn't see anything and we didn't talk about anything that just happened. And we slept in my dad's house until my grandparents came back. But when she went back to her house, nothing has happened since then. This next story is from UR_dads_secret_mom. So this happened to me around 2016 or 2015. I can't remember the exact time, but here's some information. I had 2 younger sisters who are 4 years younger than me and are twins. So I have this dream about this very tall and skinny butcher whose hair is about the length of his shoulders, and he is murdering my entire family. Again, this is just in my dreams, and he was our sketchy neighbor. And one day I was walking to school. This dream was in first person, by the way, and the man called me looking panicked, and he said that my sister was injured. So I rushed to his house, and he literally pushed me inside a room, and I felt myself falling to the ground and hitting my face. So I jolted awake from this dream of this creepy neighbor man. When I wake up, it was about 2 a.m. and I was scared, but I fell asleep again, and the dream continued. I was in the room and my sister's head was chopped up and hanged on the hook, and I was so scared. It was straight up like in HD and I cried my eyes out. And it turns out I cried in real life too. So my family woke me up and it was already 6:30 in the morning by then. So I just stayed awake. I didn't dream about that man for years until he came back in 2020. It was during lockdown, so that's why I'm so sure. At this point, I had already forgotten about the dream long ago, but it suddenly all came back to me and it continued. In the continuation, the man came in with a butcher knife, full of blood while I was crying, and I suddenly ran for my life. I locked the door and ran out of the house. Now this is the part where I find it confusing. I went straight to school as if someone didn't just try to murder me in the dream, so I didn't see my sister's head and it was chopped off. I came back home and long story short, the man lured my grandpa in and tried to save my grandpa. So I went in again and I saw him dismembering my grandfather in the dream, of course. The most disturbing thing is he killed my grandpa first and I saw every little thing in detail, and I can still vividly see the image of my grandfather's hand being chopped and stuff like that. And I'm for sure know this dream hasn't reached its ending now, and it will keep continuing throughout my life. And now I'm just hoping it won't be tonight and that this dream will not continue like a series in my life. This next story is from Odd Recognition 3810. I grew up in a pretty depressing household. When your life is miserable, you kind of stop caring about your own safety. I'm a female, by the way. One night when I was 15 years old, I decided to sneak out of my house and go for a run. I had trouble sleeping and always have, and I have a lot of anxiety and stress caused by my upbringing and family dynamic. So one night I sneak out of the house at 3 in the morning and decide to go for a run. On my way back from my run, I decided to start walking the rest of the way back. I have mace in my hand for protection, and I'm trying to calm my heartbeat so I can hear better, when suddenly I notice a guy on the desolate road. I get a spark of fear, as the surrounding streets are empty with no cars or people in sight. I decide to walk past him so he will be on the opposite side of the road from me. But when I cross him at a distance, I see his head swivel towards me. As I notice he sharply turned away, I notice his path suddenly change as he decided to walk parallel to me on the opposite side of the road. The only problem was there were many parked cars on his side, and I began losing my sight of him behind these cars, and I wanted to keep my eye on him. I was getting glimpses of him on the other side of the road as he walked at the same pace as me. The line of cars finished at the border of an overgrown field, when suddenly I realized he hadn't come out behind the last car. My stomach dropped as I realized he was either crouched behind the last car or he had ducked into an overgrown field laying wait for me. I walked faster and glanced back to see the last car had nobody beside it, and my blood ran cold as I realized he had ducked into the field and was most likely watching me and waiting to pounce. Bearing in mind at the time, this field led to nowhere, so there would be no reason to enter the field unless you were hiding and had bad intentions. I decided my best option was to not lead him towards my house, and I sprinted back all the way until I made it to my house. The scary part was my heartbeat was beating too loud for me to hear clearly, so in overreactive imagination, he was right behind me, about to grab me. I luckily escaped being attacked as a guy stalked me into the pitch black night, and I never saw him again. And that is the end of the creepy stories and this really creepy red demon character from the Insidious movies. I hope you enjoyed hearing all these creepy stories and watching me turn into this creepy demon person thing. Oh, this is so scary. I cannot wait to see the new Insidious movies. I hope you guys enjoyed. You can follow me for more. I post every Friday. This was so much fun to do. Leave me a comment down below what you would love to see on future videos, and if I love your comment, I'll definitely pick it. Thank you all so much for the support, and I will see you in the next video. Love y'all. Bye.